Welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, pharmacist, publisher, and professional editor, bringing you interviews and advice on succeeding in your residency journey. You can sign up for the email list at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com to get your free LOI template or get editing help working one-on-one with me at residency.teachable.com. Let's get started with the show. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra. Some people need kind of immediate help on some writing projects, so I do this only in the last week of the year and the beginning of the next year. So really for just a week here, but if you have a letter of intent, now this has to already be written. This isn't something where you need to develop it, that you just need it fixed for maybe one of your top sites. Or you've got those darn supplemental essays. I just charge $25 for 250 words, $50 for 500, or whatever it works out to if you got 1,500 words total, or you can do the math. But just reach out to me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. I'll get it back to you same day. Obviously, if it's late at night, it'd be early in the morning, but generally we can expect something within 12 hours. So if you're kind of in a pinch with some kind of deadline, I can fix it right away. All right, let's talk a little bit about the phone interview, or the screening interview is maybe a better word. These used to be over the phone, and it was really quick, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And now that it'll probably be over Zoom, but it may actually not be a person. It may actually be where you're being asked to record an interview. And the value of this to the site is that they can get an interview in, but they don't have to get everybody there. They can kind of send them out and say, okay, well, let's look at all of these. And if we've got thumbs up on a bunch of them, we'll take those to the greater committee, and then we'll start inviting those people in for a bigger one. And at first you might think this is kind of cruel, kind of draconian, but it's the other way around. It's actually allowing them to reach out to a much larger group, and to then, after having seen their presentations, then kind of make those decisions. But there are some things that you really need to understand with this phone interview or screening interview. And I have a book if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can get it free now. But if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, on the 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd, you'll be able to come to this webpage and get it for free. So you'll be able to get the Kindle book for free. Phone interview survival tips, job interview questions and answers for introverts and extroverts. And the idea is to understand what it is to do a 15-minute interview or do a 20-minute interview. Those of you that have done speed dating will know what this is sort of like. But the thing is that because you're graded on points, the most important thing, spoiler alert, the most important thing that you need to know before you do the interview is how many questions you're going to get. So if you have 4 questions that you're going to get in a 15-minute interview, okay, that means that there's probably a minute or 2 for an introduction, probably a minute or 2 to end it. That's 3 of your minutes. That means that you have 3 minutes to answer each of 4 questions. Now, everybody's going to get probably the same questions, but this is the problem. First of all, if you go short, that is, your answer is only 30 seconds or 45 seconds, well, you'll have more time for the other ones, but it will sound very stilted compared to the others. But here's where you can go really wrong. If you take too much time in the first or second question, that means that you may not even get the 4th question. And if you get a certain number of points and they can't even grade you on one, it almost takes you out of the running. So this phone interview survival tips, I have it in an audiobook. I think it's like $4. If you want the audiobook, I'll put the link in the show notes. But you really need to understand that a phone interview and a face-to-face or half-day or day-long Zoom interview is a very different thing. Okay, this is the Hunger Games. You're looking across the field and you see that pile of all of the things that you want to go get, but you realize that if you do that and you go long and try to do that, that it will actually knock you out of the game. So it is absolutely critical that when you are talking about this kind of phone interview, this 15-20 minute interview, that you start practicing answering your questions and being very mindful of the time. So I would personally have a timer next to me as soon as it starts. Now, for some people, that might make them nervous. But for me, knowing, okay, what are my time frames that I need to be in? Okay, I know that I'm going to have 4 questions. I know that I have 3 minutes per question. Right now, I have already answered 2 questions, and I am 8 minutes in. How much time do I have left? Well, I have 7 minutes. That's great. 3 minutes for each of the last 2 questions, 1 minute to wrap up, all done. Okay, but if you are at 12 minutes and you have 2 questions to go, now you're in a pickle. Okay, so this book is free starting tomorrow, New Year's Eve, then New Year's Day, and day after New Year's Day. But I can't tell you enough how important it is to understand and practice the phone interview. And that if it's a screening interview. Here's the audiobook one. It is free if you've never been on Audible before, but if you want it to, it's just $4, so I can't imagine that's going to break anybody's bank. And then as you're kind of going into these interviews, the actual course, that one is at residency.teachable.com/p/interview. But that will also help you with screening interview, but it'll also give you some templates to answer those direct questions like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And there's a very specific way that you need to answer those to make sure that you answer it completely. And then when it comes to the behavioral interview, you've maybe heard of the STAR framework, right? What's the situation? Okay. What was the task? Okay. What were the actions? Okay. And what was the result? If you miss part of those, then you haven't really completely answered the question. And a lot of times what happens is that you don't spend enough time on the S and the T, on setting it up. What's the situation? What's your job or what's your task in this situation? Okay, if you don't do a good setup, then your action kind of falls short because you're saying, okay, and then I did this. Whoa, what were you supposed to do? Like, what would someone have normally done? Okay, I think the best example of this is if you've seen that movie Sully, where Captain Sully Sullenberger, who is played by Tom Hanks, lands in New York's Hudson River, and it was bird strike. That's why it happened. They had to land, and everyone, spoiler alert, everybody made it out of the ordeal. Everyone was safe. But what happens is that in that kind of trial that they have, and where they show that, it would be easy for the plane to land, they didn't take into account that extra 20 seconds or 30 seconds that the person needed to think through the decisions. And when they did that, it was clear that no plane would have been able to land at any of the available airports. And that's what's going to happen to you. You can't pull off in these screening interviews that is a good question. What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? You can't waste 30 seconds to a minute kind of getting that extra time that you would be able to in a regular interview. So you kind of have to have already set what it is you're going to do. How is it that you're going to create a narrative arc in 3 minutes? And that's what the book really does, is it helps you, and the course certainly even more. That's what it really does, is say, okay, we need to have a beginning, middle, and end to this story. And the beginning is where most people really blow it, because they try to get right to where they're the hero. They try to get right to where it happened. And if you watch this movie, 80% of the movie is before the landing. And when you see that, okay, well, what's all the buildup, what happened after, and all these things, that's where the magic is. Okay, so you need to practice your setup. You need to practice those types of things with the interview. All right, so if you do need something done same day, tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. Email me the document when you send it to me and are asking about it, so I can give you some feedback and say, yeah, this is something I could do pretty quickly, or, oh, yeah, we're not really in a place that I would be able to do something with this. But most of the time, I can fix just about anything, especially as it relates to applications for residency. So hope you guys are having a good weekend. Hope you have a nice holiday. And I don't really take holidays off, so I like to do this stuff. This is actually pleasurable for me. So it's kind of one of those dreams where you're doing something that is, something you love to do. But tonythepharmacist@gmail.com if you need me. Happy holidays. Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. You might also like to check out our available residency audiobooks at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com/books, where you can get your first book free if you've never been on Audible before, or work one-on-one with me as a professional editor at residency.teachable.com. Feel free to send an invite to connect with me, Tony PharmD, on LinkedIn, or email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com with questions. Music was by Policy.